One of the most notorious jails in Appalachia, the scene of brutal murders, home of countless outlaws and moonshiners, and many who met their demise at the end of a rope as mountain justice was carried out by angry mobs. This is the true story of the historic Scott County Jail. Even today, it's said to be one of the most haunted places in Tennessee. Coming up, we take you behind the walls for a first-hand look at Appalachia's lawless past. Just south of the Kentucky border lies one of the wildest, most remote areas in Appalachia, Scott County, Tennessee. For over 100 years, it was home to some of the most lawless outlaws in American history. For the judicial system, Scott County was the western frontier. There was no fear of the law here, and people found it necessary to deal with thieves and murderers in the most expedient manner possible. It was here, at the Scott County Jail, where this mountain justice was delivered in cold-blooded fashion. On multiple occasions, mobs overtook this jail and brought criminals to immediate justice in the streets for all the world to see. Several men were hanged, while others were made to run for their lives like animals, while citizens shot at them like they were rabbit hunting. One man was hung from an oak tree behind the jail when his rope broke, so the citizens simply restrung him up again, using the wire from a barbed wire fence. You see, Scott County Jail was the last place that an outlaw wanted to find himself. Chances were good that he would never even make it to court before justice was handed out.
So the jail was built in 1904. It is made up of solid sandstone bricks, which are 3 feet by 4 feet by 5 feet thick. And it really was that center of crime and punishment here in Scott County. It was the representation of a strong stance on law and order. It was built by the county because, we had moonshiners at that point, and they wanted to project that strong stance on law and order.
Now, while the authorities did their best to establish law and order, it would prove to be a bloody proposition. You see, outlaws didn't even think twice when it came to killing a man in these hills. And many times, they would never even face charges for it. And if they did, well, any lawman who dared to arrest them would be risking his own life to do so. One such case happened in 1925. Sheriff R.D. Ellis had spent his life as a fire and brimstone preacher, spreading the gospel about the evils of moonshine. But you see, he was also the type of man to practice what he preached. And during the years of Prohibition, he had declared war on any man who manufactured white whiskey. A fearless man, he raided many stills and filled the Scott County Jail with moonshiners. But finally, the shiners had had enough, and in August of 1925, the good sheriff arrested yet another distiller and was taking him into the Scott County Jail. And as he stood in front of the entrance, 2 men emerged from the shadows, both armed with shotguns, and they fired 3 shots into Sheriff Ellis's head, killing him instantly. Now, despite a $250 reward and posses who scoured the mountains, the killers couldn't be found. In fact, countless men had helped hide them, and quite frankly, they were just glad to be rid of the nosy lawmen. And this crime remains unsolved to this very day.
So the history of the jail is vast. We've had everything from a sheriff that was killed right outside the front door in 1925. That is still an unsolved murder here in the county. We've had inmates who were lynched via what they call mountain justice, where mobs of angry inmates mobs of angry citizens would come in and grab the inmates that they wanted and either hang them out back, or in the case of Jerome Boyett and Harvey Winchester, they took them out about 2 miles from here and shot and killed them.
Speaking of mountain justice, perhaps the most shocking example occurred in 1933. A young man named Jerome Boyett was known as a local moonshiner who lived in the No Business Creek community. Now, folks who knew him said that he wasn't the type to look for trouble, but he knew how to handle it. And as fate would have it, trouble came knocking at his door on April 21st, 1933. It all started that morning when Jerome and his uncle got into a heated argument over Jerome selling liquor at a mining camp just over the county line. Before you knew it, words turned into fists, and Jerome had put a severe beating on his uncle, so bad that the law was summoned, as Jerome and 4 other men were being held in a railroad boxcar. Now, what happens next when the sheriff and his son arrived is still highly disputed to this very day. If you believe the newspapers, Jerome was drunk and opened fire on the officers first. But witnesses who were on the scene stated that the sheriff's son shot in the air first as a warning to come out of the boxcar. And when that shot was fired, Jerome's brother started screaming. In the chaos of the moment, Jerome believed that his brother had been hit by the lawman's bullet. So he returned fire from his .45 caliber automatic, hitting the sheriff's son twice in the head, killing him dead. The sheriff then drew his weapon and returned fire, and for his efforts, Jerome shot him twice in the stomach before fleeing the scene into the mountains that he knew like the back of his hand. The lawman would die in the hospital, and suddenly there was a $600 bounty on Jerome Boyette's head. At this point, all hell broke loose. The deceased sheriff's cousin was also the sheriff in Clinton County, Kentucky, and without any legal jurisdiction or even a warrant, he took a 100-man posse across the state line into Tennessee looking for Jerome. And when he couldn't find him, he arrested Jerome's entire family, his mother, his father, and all 4 of his sisters, and threw them in jail in Kentucky. But there was still no sign of Jerome. So the Kentucky sheriff released the boy's father in an attempt to get Jerome to surrender. But according to multiple sources, it was made clear that if Mr. Boyette didn't return his son, then he would be killed. Lo and behold, after the father's release, no one heard from Mr. Boyette for nearly 10 days. Finally, his neighbors went to his house where they found him dead from a broken neck lying on his bed. Once Jerome got word of his father's death, he surrendered to the Scott County sheriff in an effort to keep any more harm from coming to his family. So now Jerome was being held in the Scott County jail, alongside another man named Harvey Winchester, who was also being held for murder, where they were awaiting trial. Yet, those mountaineers had no intentions of ever letting those old boys make it to the trial. And a few days later, a strange and very convenient coincidence occurred. You see, the new acting sheriff just so happened to be out of town all night long, and while he was gone, 25 men wearing sacks over their heads burst through the Scott County jail door and overpowered the guards, taking the jailhouse keys, making their way up to the top floor, where Boyette and Winchester were being held. Once upstairs, 2 of the men took their masks off and approached the criminals and told them that they were cops who were there to move them to another jail to keep them safe. "Y'all don't want to stay here. There's talk of a mob coming," the supposed lawman said. And then he proceeded to handcuff Boyette and Winchester together and brought them out of their cells. In that moment, Boyette saw the mob of men standing down the hall with sacks still over their heads. Witnesses said that Boyette screamed like a rabbit as ropes were tied around both criminals' necks and they were dragged down the stairs, out of the jailhouse into the streets, where they were marched like animals for all to see. Winchester was forced to run around in circles with a rope tied around his neck as a man held the other end of the rope, as bystanders shot at him multiple times before finally killing him. Now it was Boyette's turn, and he was forced to strip buck naked underneath the full moon. And then the men let him run for his life down the street, begging and screaming for help as the mountaineers tracked him and shot at him like they were hunting rabbits. And by sunrise, Winchester was lying dead in the street with 6 bullets in him, and 40 yards away, Boyette was dead with 7 bullets riddling his naked body. Mountain justice had been served. Strangely, no one could identify any man who carried out these brutal killings. Hey guys, JD here from the Appalachian Storyteller, and we're back with an exclusive look behind the walls at one of Appalachia's most notorious jails, the historic Scott County Jail. And here's Miranda to tell us more.
We've also had 6 lynch mobs that have busted into the jail, taken inmates to various parts of the property and lynched or executed them. And then we've also had a sheriff who was allegedly involved with the Pablo Escobar drug cartel. It was part of an FBI sting called Mach 10 that took place in 1985. And he was arrested with 12 other officials in surrounding counties. He was allegedly allowing cocaine planes to safely land here in the community and pass through.
Lawmen killing outlaws, and outlaws killing lawmen. Citizens taking justice into their own hands and executing criminals in the streets. Scott County was ground zero for lawlessness. But occasionally, a celebrity would be gifted a free night's stay in the Scott County Jail. One such occasion involved Ernest Tubbs, one of the most influential pioneers of country music. You see, Tubbs was in town playing a concert down at the high school auditorium when he went on one of his famous drunks. He got so rowdy that the good folks of Scott County took the famous singer straight to jail and locked him up for the night. But that didn't ruin the concert, since the guards handed Mr. Tubbs a guitar and told him to keep right on playing.
Well, the most infamous, or the most famous inmate that we know of is Ernest Tubb. He was a country singer, and he was performing a concert at the Huntsville school. Got a little intoxicated, as Ernest Tubbs was known to do, and so they did arrest him. They booked him for one night here at the jail, and the reports are that the jailer at the time actually gave him a guitar, and he performed a private concert for all of the inmates here that evening.
During the years it operated, Scott County Jail was plagued with countless violations of inmate safety, and it finally closed in 2008. Since that time, the jail has stood as a haunting reminder of a lawless past. The iconic building is listed on the National Register of Historic Places and has been converted into a true crime museum. And speaking of a haunting past, the building has also been listed as one of the top 10 most haunted buildings in the state of Tennessee.
Paranormal activity is extremely common here at the historic Scott County Jail, and what makes it interesting is those paranormal claims were actually being made while the jail was in operation. So we've had sheriff's deputies come in, dispatchers come in, and tell us that while they were working here, they had unexplained events happen to them. For example, when the elevator would run on its own, or at one point a detective got into the elevator by herself and something coughed in her ear. We had another detective who had a desk set up where our booking room is, and one evening everything was just shoved off of her desk while she was sitting there. She watched it occur. So the paranormal events and claims existed when the jail was in operation.
Between myself and my business partner, Christy, we're here up to 16 hours a day, so we experience stuff day and night while we're here. Some of the things that have been captured here have been disembodied voices, a 7-foot shadow figure. We've even had pictures get thrown off the walls, and people have actually seen the shadow figures that captured them doing that. We've even captured shadow figures on the live stream. So it's not uncommon to have doors slam, footsteps. It's very, very much an active place.
Now there are many more stories to learn about at this historic building. Today, the jail operates as a true crime museum by day and hosts paranormal investigation teams from around the world by night.
So the jail opened as a museum in September of 2021. It's ran by my business partner and myself. We formed the company History, Highways, and Haunts, LLC, and opened this as a true crime museum during the day and a paranormal research center at night.
My business partner, Miranda Young, and I, we both have an interest in the paranormal, but we also have an interest in historic preservation. So that was one of the things that we really stressed strive to accomplish here with the historic Scott County Jail. We want the building to be preserved. We want the history to be preserved. And but then at the same time, we also want to be able to research those unexplained paranormal phenomena that happened here at the jail as well. And but besides that, we also offer general daytime tours for the public. So whether or not you're interested in history or paranormal, you can come in and experience the jail during the day. We also offer after dark tours, such as flashlight tours, guided ghost hunts, and paranormal investigations. We also have an escape room upstairs, which is kind of fun in our maximum security level. But we also offer other things such as motorcycle events, where we have motorcycle groups that we will lead to other historic locations. We end here at the jail and provide you with a tour of the jail. We also offer book signings as well. Different events such as school groups and stuff can come in as well. So it just really runs the gamut of things that we offer here at the jail.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoy this type of content, with me taking you to historic places in Appalachia with exclusive tours and interviews, let me know in the comments below. Special thanks to Miranda and Christy for allowing us to film the Scott County Jail and sharing its history with us. If you're ever in the area, it's a must-see destination. Tell them JD sent you.